Hello everybody, thank you for coming. It's very nice to see you here. I'm very happy to be here at Siglum to tell you a little about how we use GWT in STEP. STEP is our solution at Stibo Systems, where I'm a senior software developer. And well, the headline here is Enterprise GWT. And what I'm going to tell you about is a little about how we use GWT to expose data from our enterprise solution. And we have an agenda here. First I want to tell you a little about who we are and where we're placed, etc. And then I want to tell you a little about our customers, who they are, and like what are the challenges they have in their everyday business, and why they need to use a big system for that. It's a step to the rescue, so I already spoiled how we do this. Sorry, just trying to get. So okay. So a little about how we can, with our step system, we can help our customers achieve the things that they need to achieve. And then I want to talk a little about our data model. We have a very generic data model that we use for our customers, and then we also, of course, need to expose this generic data, and this is where GWT comes in. Finally, we have this question and answer section, but actually I was just thinking about maybe I should just remove that and just put questions and answers just all over the place, because really I want you guys to just shoot and ask me anything along the way, and we can of course also sum up in the end here also. So let's get started. A little bit about us. We are a part of the Stibo group. Stibo group is Stibo Systems, but it's also a company called CCI. CCI makes software for advertising in newspapers. And they have some of the biggest American newspapers and a lot of others as customers for this. And we have our printing division. Actually, Stibo comes out of an old printing shop. We are a very old company. I don't remember how old right now. Embarrassing, a couple of 100 years or something. But we still do printing. Then we have MagPeople, which is a company that makes software for a magazine. We are present globally. We have our offices in Atlanta in the US, yes, and we have sales offices around the world. We also have a development department in the UK, and finally we have right now here in Ukraine. We just started the development department here, and that's why I'm here at Siglum. And our headquarters is in Denmark. I don't know if you know a lot about Denmark, but it's right up there in that area. We are right now a little over 500 employees. The most of those employees are in the US. US is the biggest market for us at the moment, and has been that for a very long time. So we have a lot of people over there. We have a lot of custom developers who implement our system for the customers and make custom development, custom customizations, it's called. So who are our customers? We have these verticals. We have the manufacturing, which is manufacturers is companies that create something. The distributors are the ones who take all the manufacturers' stuff and make sure that it's going to be distributed around the world. Then we have the retailers. Those are the ones that we buy stuff from. The ones that they have business to business and business to consumer. And then we have a vertical we call travel and hospitality. I'll get back into that one. We actually also have another vertical that we are going into now. It's called the automotive vertical, where we have automotive companies, and I can maybe also talk a little about that later. But in the manufacturing, we have some well-known big companies. I assume that you know a lot of these companies, and they were probably also present here in the Ukraine. In the distributions, we also have, they are probably a little less well-known in the public, because they are usually dealing with doing the distribution behind the scenes, and we don't always see them. RS is maybe one if you're into electronics, and RS you might know them. I'm a little geeky on the electronic side, so I buy some stuff from RS once in a while. But the retailers, those are the ones that we know out here as customers. And also some of these companies are present here in Ukraine also. In the last segment here we have a little mix of different stuff. We have some travel companies, we have a group of companies that have resorts and hotels around the world, and they use our system to model all the resorts in the hotels and the rooms and manage the bookings and stuff like that. So I want to tell you about what it is that these customers they use us for. Why do they need us? Well, we have this thing called the master data management, which is what this is all about. And master data management, I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but it's all boils down to that companies who have a lot of products, they need, or maybe they don't have so many products, but they have complex products, they need somewhere in the organization where they can store all the information about the products. And well, you can say that a lot of systems can do that, and usually in some organizations, especially the smaller organizations, they have all this information in a lot of systems. That's actually where it goes wrong, because if you have all the product information in your accounting system, also in the warehouse system and in your bookkeeping system and everywhere else, then you probably don't have all this synchronized. So that's why they need one place to have it all and keep it up to date. And that's what we call, usually call a golden record for each product. A golden record is that record that really is the truth about each product. So this we cannot have any duplicates of the product data. We just need this one place where we can go in and find all information about the one product. But this also means, of course, that we need to integrate to all those systems that need to use this information for something. Maybe like stop keeping the bookkeeping, cashier systems. We have companies that have this in the shops. They have the cashier systems that are hooked directly up to our system, so they have up-to-date prices all the time, and the barcodes that are scanned for all the products in the system already. We have shop planners. Also, that is very widely used, probably more than you even think about. All the shops, it's a very big business to make sure that when you enter a shop, you're guided in the right direction around all the products that you get so that the shops get to maximize your buy and your purchase from this store. And also, by the way, just before you leave and pay, you have also a shelf over there with some candy and something that can just get the last pennies out of you also. So we help those companies to drag all the money out of your pockets. Then we also have truck loading planners, which is something else also. Maybe we don't think so much about it, but if you have to transport a lot of different stuff from one place to another, then you need to have some trucks for that. And maybe if you have something which is very heavy, you can only have maybe a little bit of that in each truck, and they run away half empty. So you need some truck planners to make sure that you can fill up the trucks as much as possible and make as few trips as possible. And this is just an example of the systems that we integrate with. Then besides products, which is probably what I'm going to talk a lot about, because products is what we have been handling the most. And there's also, of course, other kinds of data. And we are moving into now to the customer data space, which is about, like, for instance, we have Sony, which is one of the cases. Sony, they use us for their product management, but they also have probably some of you and me, at least, in the records also as customers. And we are probably registered in different places throughout the organization. All this customer data is very valuable for a company to be able to know which TV do you have and what else can they try to sell you, or how can they use all the information they have about the customers. And that's actually what we call the multi-domain MDM, which means that we don't just deal with products, we deal with other kind of data also. So, you know, we have on the slide with all the customers, we have these verticals. We have the manufacturers, for instance. They typically have a small range of products, and with a small range might be maybe a couple of thousand products or something like that, depending on the manufacturer. So they don't have so many products, but they have an awful lot of information about each product. They know if it says food, they have all the ingredients, and they know what packages they come in, how big the packages are, and they know also there's some health information that needs to go with the packages, and they know how much they weigh and how many of these packages they put on a pallet, and a lot of other things, but also, for instance, the package, how big they are. It's also used in the shop planners when you have to put this stuff on a shelf, you make sure that it needs to fit in there. So they're one kind of customer. Few products, but a lot of information for that. But then if you look at especially the retailers, the ones who like the Toys R Us, you probably know that the toy vendor, they have an awful lot of companies that deliver the products to them. So they have an awful lot of products they sell, but they don't need so much information about each product as the manufacturers does, because they don't need to know exactly how to manufacture it and all the small measurements about how it's created and stuff. And they just more need something about, okay, we have this toy, but what kind of batteries does it use? And how many of each battery does it need? And what kind of other toy is similar to this, and what can we sell that is maybe something someone else also buys like this. So it's typically a totally different kind of information that is needed for that. Some of our customers have a lot of products. We have Bol.com, which is a Dutch company. It's the equivalent of Amazon. They have around 150 million products they sell. They are what they call a long tail retailer. So they have an awful lot of products, and then maybe some of the products is only sold one every second year or something. Some of them, of course, are best sellers. But they live off of all these different products that they just sell one or two of all these products. But one of the requirements they have is also about gathering information from different places for the books, for instance. So they get the ISBN number from one place and the description from another place, and reviews from the third place, and so on. So these other customers, they require this MDM solution that they have to model different item types, like for instance the books, bicycles, cereal, whatever. You know, if a retailer could be a big supermarket, they have a lot of different products with a lot of different attributes to it. So they need to be able to create some attributes with different validators. When I say validators, I mean it could be just a text area, so not really much to validate, except maybe the length of the text. It could also be, as the example I gave with the batteries, how many batteries, then it needs to be a number, an integer validator. It could also be a date validator, barcode validator, ISBN number validator, or whatever. And then they also need to be able to link these attributes to different item types. So of course, it doesn't really make any sense to link the batteries to the cereal, usually. So you need to be able to make sure that all this coupling about these attributes, it needs to make sense for the products where you link this in. So you can do that on the item types, but you can also do it if you have a hierarchy of products. You can just say, okay, from here and down, we just want to link this attribute in here. Then we also need to model the relation between all the items. For instance, again, coming back to this toys for batteries, then we need to make sure that we have that relation modeled also. And also maybe a product-to-product relation where you say, okay, this product actually is an accessory to the other product, or it's interesting you have this product, you might also look at this product. Then also we need to store some assets and relate them to the items. When I say assets, that can be anything like photos. You need to have a picture for the website for all your products. And an asset could also be a user manual, a PDF. It could also be a video, instructional video that shows you how to use the product or how to assemble it or something like that. And then finally, we also need to be able to categorize all these items. So I'll give an example of that a little later, how that could be. But you need, well, as I said before, you have just each product just one time in the database. It's very important for us. But then sometimes you need to have them in different categories, and you should be able to do that also. Okay, so the customers, they have some functional requirements for the MDM solution also. Of course, they need to import the data. That's pretty obvious when you start out, and also along the way, they need some imports. They also need to export the data for some reason sometime. And they need to monitor the quality of the data they have. We have some solutions in the system where we ensure the data quality. Like you can set up rules for this object type. We always need these two attributes to fill out, and we rather want that this one's filled out. But if it's not, it's okay. But it scores lower in data quality tool if it isn't. So monitoring the quality of the data they have in the system is also very important for them, so they can make an effort to make better data. Then also, of course, set only one product, or if it's customers, that can actually be one of the worst cases, that the customers can be registered with maybe slightly different names. I see, for instance, here in Ukraine, I sometimes have a hard time with Maxim, the guy who was just here before. Like, okay, is that M-Y-X-I-M, or is that M-I-K-S-I-M, or how to spell? And maybe if you translate it from the Cyrillic alphabet, you're not really sure should it be an X or a KS or whatever. So one time you enter one in one way and another one in another way. And maybe you move, so the next time you enter it, you have a new address. So how do we figure out if these records, if that's actually the same customer? That's also something that needs to be done here. So we can set up rules, again, like matching rules to say, okay, we can choose different algorithms, and we can also customize some algorithms to figure out if records are duplicated. Then also, of course, because some of these customers are worldwide customers, so they need to have translation also, of course. So even, for instance, a very close example is in the States, where they have North America, they have USA, but they also have Canada, where they have French also. So, of course, they need to be able to translate that, and they need the system to also handle that. One more thing that I actually didn't put up here is the regional differences. Like, again, take the States that we have. Home Depot is a company that sells home improvement stuff. So they also sell like snow scrapers for scraping snow, but you probably don't want to sell snow scrapers in the south of USA, because they never have snow there. So you need to be able to make sure that you only have the relevant products in the relevant regions. Okay, so the workflow is another important thing. Workflows, we use that for a lot of things, but for instance, for onboarding, data onboarding, if you have a new product from one of the manufacturers and you want to find out if, okay, do we want to sell this, then the manufacturer can actually go in himself into the system and just create this product in the system. But it can be moved further on in the workflow, which means that someone at our customer will be notified, okay, we have a new product from this manufacturer, and he wants to evaluate, is that something we want to have here? And maybe he declines and says the reason we don't want, and maybe he says, yes, okay, let's pass it on to the system, and he asks for some more information. And we have a quite a sophisticated workflow mechanism in the system to ensure all this. Well, packaging hierarchies is again about what I told. It's when you have a product, and how many products do you put in a box of each, and how many boxes in one of the bigger boxes, and how many of the bigger boxes in the pallet, and how many pallets in the truck, and stuff like that. E-catalogs, as I mentioned also earlier, we come out of a company which is a printing company, and we also still have some publications that we make, like physical catalogs. It's a long time since I've actually seen this physical catalog, but RS, for instance, used to have this huge printed catalog, Nowadays, we don't make printed catalogs for them, we make e-catalogs for them. And publications is kind of the same also, but a catalog is more like this extensive everything in one catalog, where the publications can be something where you just have a few products and you just want to highlight them and write a little about something else, and you can put that together in the system. Address validation, that comes back to again the customer's case. Address validation is actually surprised me very much when we started dealing with that. It's actually very complicated to do address validation. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. Actually, some companies have address validation as the only service they provide. So that's a big area also. But we have a little snippet of that in our system also, but then we also integrate to other parties, like these companies who live out of this business alone. We also have, I don't think I have that on the slides, no. We also have credit validation, like for instance in the States you have something called Dun & Bradstreet. It's a company that knows something about this customer who wants to buy this, but how is this, can he pay for it? Is he in debt or something like that? And pricing, of course, is also an important thing to handle your pricing, also regional, maybe also by different customers in different custom segments. We want to have different pricing. And I could go on talking about a lot of things that we need to be able to manage our data. So on top of the functional requirements, we also, of course, have the need to manage a model and manage the data that we put into the system and manage the way that we get it out of the system also. And we have some UI requirements, of course. And well, basically when we ask the customers, okay, what do you need? We need everything. We need a UI that can do everything. So we actually right now we have a UI that can do everything in step. That is a swing-based system we have right now, and we're moving away from that, but I'll tell you a little bit more about that. Because it has to be accessible from anywhere. A swing app, that we can say that it could be accessible from anywhere, but you don't always really want that, because if you have depending on your infrastructure, you might have to expose a server that has the service layer for the swing app, and maybe you don't really want to expose that outside your internal infrastructure. So, but that's what the demand is now. Also, for if you look at the customer case with these hotel managers, for instance, if you have the RCI, hotels all over the globe, maybe some small hotel in Spain. This hotel manager, he's just not an IT guy, he's a guy who knows how to use the browser and nothing else. So if he gets, they just get a new room in that hotel, he wants to manage that in the system. We don't want him to have a big user interface that is swing-based and looks really difficult when you just enter it. Actually, it's not that difficult, but it looks really difficult because it's kind of an old-fashioned way to do this. We also need this to be customizable, because not all users, as I said, for instance, this hotel owner, he doesn't need to know a lot about all the attributes that RCI have for internally to manage his hotel. He just needs to know about how many rooms we have, and here's the photo of the swimming pool, and maybe not so much else, maybe the pricing and something like that. So we need to customize it for different users. And as mentioned, yeah, we target end users. We don't target IT professionals. We also do that, but that's not. It's easier sometimes to target guys like us, because we can always figure it out, even though it looks a little nasty. Then yeah, we get around it and we figure a way out. But a lot of say normal people. Well, I can say that because I'm also in the same boat. But people who are not IT professionals, they just give up if they see something that looks difficult. So we cannot have it to look difficult. So that means also we have to have this good usability. It means don't make something that you have to click 3 times and figure out, okay, then you have to go to this menu and over there to make things work. It needs to be logical and work in a good way. Okay, so wonder who can do all this. Well, we are actually right now Stibo Systems the only one who can do this in one package. We have some of the big competitors. I haven't got a slide with competitors, but we have some of the big ones like Oracle and SAP. We also have a company called Hyper, a German company, and but actually IBM we also have as a competitor in this area. They all want to do this MDM, and they all have a solution for MDM. The thing about big companies is that they usually achieve stuff by purchasing smaller companies, which means that Oracle, for instance, they have around I won't mention numbers, but they have multiple systems that the customers should use in order to achieve all these things. So if they have an area where they're missing something, what do? Purchase another one. So they have that functionality on the list, and they say, okay, yes, we have that. But they just forget to mention that then you have to adapt to yet another system. Maybe they make some basic integration, so you get there, but basically they don't have this one solution. We are very professional. Of course we are. I wouldn't say anything differently, but well, if we look at the big customers we have, the complexity that some of the customers have, you need to be professional about this. We have it's a reason why we have more than 500 employees, and actually only a small percentage of these employees are actually developers. That's why. That's because, of course, we need a bigger organization around the customers to support them, to install the system, to maintain the system, and to make sure that the customers are happy, and to help them model their data in the best way. Because they can model the data themselves, but it can be very difficult to foresee all the problems they get themselves into if they do it the wrong way. That's usually one of the problems of allowing people to do everything. Then they do everything, and it's not always good. Hello? 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 Okay. Just speak a little louder then. Maybe it's working. Okay, and that is actually what makes us one of the leaders in this market. There's a company called Gartner. It's an analysis company that evaluates a lot of different segments in markets like this. And MDM is one of the segments they monitor. And we are in the top 3 list in what they call the Magic Quadrant. That's something they call it. You can look it up. MDM Magic Quadrant Gartner, and you can see that we are rated very high in that list. And as I said, also we actually beat these competitors a lot of times. We actually just won a customer who they initially said no to us like a couple years ago. They went with Oracle. Now they came back and asked us to replace Oracle. So we have a lot of wins from these, and actually it's very often we compete with Oracle and IBM and this company called Hyper. The same kind of companies we compete with all the time. We actually have, if you remember the slides, we actually have IBM as a customer also. They have their own solution, but that part of the company that purchased the solution for us, they didn't know that they had the solution. It probably isn't as good as ours. Okay, so step, that's our system as a set, and that's what we make. We don't make anything else. We are MDM multi-domain MDM provider, that's it. We focus on that. Yeah, we run on Oracle Jetty, Apache in the front, and say, okay, why Jetty? That's so really low-tech. Yes, and that's what we like. Really low-tech. Some of our customers actually run WebSphere, but we try to convince them to not, but for some reason they just insist that they need to have this really expensive web container where we can run Jetty inside that and run our application off of that. But we're probably aware of these technologies. Felix, Osmo, and Codo. Codo being like Hibernate JVM implementation. And then we use open source products, including GWT. So a little bit, just very briefly about the architecture. This is very simplified. As mentioned, we have Oracle as a database. We have a persistence layer, and then we have a domain layer on top of the persistence layer. And on top of that, we have some different, you can say, some UIs and some integration endpoints like REST API, Web Service API, and a lot of other integration endpoints that integrate with other systems. But right now we're going to focus on the portal, because that's what we are actually doing here in the department in Korean also. That's the portal that's of course going to use GWT. Any questions so far? I've just been talking.
Is the display layer is this?
Well, that was. Well, we have the portal, which is the web UI, and the workbench, which is you can say the legacy swing application. And it's also that's the two display layers, you can say that, the two UIs that we have for this. Actually, now that I've distinguished the portal from the domain layer, but actually we're working very closely with the domain layer on the portal to achieve everything we do. But basically, we do not want any of these layers to have any functionality which is not in the domain layer. We want the domain layer to be the place where we have the hooks and the handles for doing everything we want to do. Then we just exchange we just get tired of the portal in 10 years, and now we have something new. We just build something new on top of the domain layer.
It would be interesting to see your GWT application architecture. It's not there.
Yeah, I know. I don't have actually a slide with the architecture put up there, but I'll show you. I'll show you in a little bit of the code also. But first, I want to talk a little about how we model this data, because that leads us over to how we use GWT to expose the data. So basically, we have this model which just consists of nodes and edges. You all heard of that probably on first year in the studies here also, very basic. And we have some node types and some edge types. Node types are again like, for instance, very stuff like, for example, like product is a node type. Classification, we're used to classify stuff, is a node type. And the nodes is you can say the implementation, the node type, the edge type is the interface. Then we also have, as mentioned, the attributes. The attributes are also actually just nodes in the database, and the links between the product and attributes or edges. And we have value inheritance, which means that in the hierarchy we can make sure that we have something globally to say about an entire hierarchy of products. You instead of having to maintain that information all through the hierarchy, you inherit this information through the hierarchy. Then of course we have some use and privileges so that we can make sure that we can set up different user groups that have different privileges. Let's look at a simplified data model. Like we can say that for product nodes, we could have something like electric appliances. Now this is again the types we're talking about. And we can have something like clothing, and clothing we can have like shoes, jeans. We can also say we treat the jeans as a product family because we have a lot of variation of the jeans. We have the gender, male, female. We have some models which are gender specific. And again, we have some color variants in there. And again, this is hierarchical, and we have functionalities in here to create these variants automatically based on some different material. But again, this is just a model that we're building on top of our generic model. Then again, for the classification node types, we could also have something like, say, okay, across all the shoes and the jeans and all other stuff that is this gender specific, we can have, for instance, a classification where everything that is for men, we map that into the male classification, no matter if it's shoes or if it's jeans or whatever it is, or if it's, we have, yeah, whatever you can imagine, it has this male attribute. And female also, of course. I didn't want to skip that fast. Female are also important, even though we don't have any female here. Okay, so now actually to the interesting part. So we need to expose this data in the portal. Now, of course, we're talking about GWT. So the way that we do this is that we have some components, like the component that we talked about, the building blocks of the portals here. We have some very, very simple components, like for instance for an attribute, you just have a component, the only thing it does is to show the content of an attribute and make it editable. And this one attribute, it doesn't know anything about what else is in the world, it just knows something about itself. And we have, that's what we call value components, because it's for a given product or a given node of any kind, we have some value that can be edited on that node. It could be something like a single value, just a text drop down or radio button. It could also be that we want to assign or to link an asset to this product. So, and again, it could be references like we want to reference other products and we want to put it into some classifications and stuff like that. And then again, so we say we can configure the portal with all these components, but all the time we need to make sure that the components that we show are relevant for whatever node that the user has selected. So, of course, the visibility of the component, this component depends on the selection we have. So each component will figure out from the framework will tell it, okay, we have this product that we're showing right now. We want to be shown for this product, so the component itself will decide based on the different criteria, should I be shown or not. And also depends also on the portal configuration, of course. If it's not configured in the portal, of course, it will not be shown. You can have an infinite number of portals configured there, and we can have a lot of different configurations, so it also depends on that. It can also depend on the object type. Again, if we have an asset, that asset has some different properties that are not the same for a product, for instance, and something else, so we need to look at the object type. And also, of course, we need to look at the users logged in. Does this user have any privileges to access this this thing that this component actually shows? Okay, so on top of the value components, we also have some other components, because it's not all about managing data. We need some screens somewhere to set up these screens for. Sure, you can call it just like the equivalent of that is maybe just a page, a web page, in a normal website. But we also need some layout components so we can put it up in a nice way and have some different panels and tables and maybe some tabs and the flippers that, like this, we have these ones flat, and you can click it and it opens up and shows something more underneath. And we have a lot of other display or layout components. This is what we call the action components are for, okay, what do you want to do? You want to save this, delete it, or export all the things that we have selected in the list, or whatever you need to do, some action to do to perform on the selection. Okay, so if you're looking at the way that we have this configuration, we actually store the configurations of the portals as XML in the database. We do that because it's very generic way to store things, and it's very easy to handle. And you can parse it very easily with one of the normal parsers, like the SARS parser. And it's generally pretty fast because usually the screens are not very complex, so it's not very big blobs of XML that we are treating at a time. So this is a simplified configuration file. So well, it's probably pretty easy to understand here. We generally just have this screens where we have the ability to configure different screens. Now, if you're looking at where's my mouse? Okay, so for instance, like, okay, we have the screens, which of course contains a list of screens. And here's the screen instance. We say this is the ID. This is the ID that we actually expose in the portal, and that the ones who configure this choose an ID. That's the same for everywhere else. We have an ID. That's the ID that's is customizable. The user can for the components, the users can decide themselves what the ID should be. Now we have the type, and the type is what we use to identify okay, what kind of component is it, or what kind of screen is it that we have here, because we have a lot of different components, a lot of different screens. So we need a type for this. So this is what we look up in the system, and the framework looks it up for us to identify the exact type that we need here. So all the screens and all the components can be configured in different ways. It's just a few parameters we have here for this marketing screen. Like enforce validity, it means it says something about this screen. Do we want to enforce that all the fields should be filled out before the user can save it? Or are we okay with the user just leaving some field blanks? Because we also have something called submitting a product. Submitting a product means that we move it on to what we call the approved workspace. So, well, okay, now we're done working with this product and we think it's okay now, so we can submit it to the approved workspace. So, but while we're working on it, we may be okay with the user leaving stuff blank. So that's one of the parameters. But besides from the parameters, we also have the components inside the screen. And we see we have this node editor. And this node editor itself has a list of parameters, but in this, the rows parameter is actually components that it has in the list. So here we have kind of this nesting. If you imagine we have the screen outside, and it has an editor inside it, which has a row, a list of rows, which is actually the components which will show and allow you to edit stuff. See, the first component is called the ID value, which means that okay, here you can see the ID of the selection you have. If you're just creating a selection, you can of course you can edit this value, but of course as soon as it's been created, the ID is unique if you cannot edit it. And the name value below, sorry, is for editing the name, and then the one we have here is just called value because here we don't know what value we actually want to edit before we find the attribute down here. So we see this is an attribute that's called description. So we configure that we want a description for a description attribute for this product. The same also down here we have something called the manufacturer part number as the attribute down here that which will also tell something about the product. Okay, so let me find our web start page. This is the page where it all starts. We have the ability here to launch the workbench, which is the legacy system. I'll not do that now. And we have some portals down here which are configured for this instance of Stibo. Let's go into the user portal here. We are working off of a server in Denmark right now, so that's why the response time is a little slow. That's why. So, again. Okay. So the first thing we see here is in this portal configuration, we've configured some widgets on this front page, like the page where you went the first time. And we have a lot of different widgets that you can enter here, but one of the widgets is the search widget that allows you to perform a search in the database. So we have some type ahead already there that gives you some feeling about what products you can expect here. And in this configuration, you actually don't see the list of search results right now because I've configured this one. So we move directly to the first product that is found. And then instead of having the list, we actually have the paging out here so you can move between the products that are found in that search you just made. And again, if you try to take a look at this screen, this is actually the node detail screen that I had in this example configuration, or actually something similar. And as you can see, we have the buttons. Actually, I didn't get to that. Maybe we should just that was the thing that I missed. Aside from the rows, here in the top we have down here some buttons which configure the screen. So we have some save and we have reset, this submit action I was talking about. So, oops. So these are the buttons down here that are configured, that are placed on the screen. And everything else is configured below. Below this screen we have some tabs and we have some other different kind of stuff. The way that it's configured in the portal is that we have something we call design mode. Did I hit that? Yeah, there we go. So, of course, this design mode is restricted to it should be restricted to some of the administrative users only. Of course, we don't want this Spanish hotel owner to accidentally go into the configuration and configure stuff. So, it's a little small screen here, but you see we have this markup of all the components in the tree here, and if we select something here, you see that we actually have the node details, the screen type that I was mentioning also in the configuration, and we have the main component in this case is the tab control, which is again. The tabs over here, and the tabs, if you go to the tab control, it again has some tab pages. And if you just make it a little bit smaller. See, for instance, the product attributes over here, if you want this one to be in a different place, just move it here. And if it just goes slow, we will at some point see that it's, oh, sorry, moving up. It's not moving, sorry. So it moves to the second place here, and move it further, and we go into the tabs here, and for instance the references here decide, okay, now in here we also want a new component to be added to this tab, etc. So this is the way that our customers, or at least the ones who are developing the portals, that they work with the system. They have this in the portal editor or the designer where they just manipulate everything. And when you click save here, this is all just passed back to the configuration and saved in the database. And yes, that's of course we have a lot of components. Doesn't really make sense to show. It's just a selection of the components that can be added to this particular kind of screen. We have some restrictions on each component about where it can be added, because sometimes it doesn't really make sense to add maybe to add a tree in the middle of this product selector. So we have some restrictions also that's built into the system about how to actually structure each portal. So let's have a look at exit. Okay. So a brief look at some of the code, which is well, I just brought out this node details component that we have here. To see that we have this, the ID here is the node details. What we have up here is we have in STEP generally, it's not just for the portal, but for STEP, the whole framework, we have a plugin system which is very flexible. So it's made in the way that we have all our components for the portal. They are all structured as what we call the server components. So the framework knows that if we ask for a server component, it knows it's a portal server component, because all the components that are implemented in the server component interface. So when we pass out the XML and we hit this screen with a type node details, or the framework will actually go into the plugin system and say, okay, give me the server component, which in the plugin description up here has the ID node details. So it finds this component, and now it's actually just extending an abstract here. So if we go into that, we get a bit more complex model here. Okay, maybe I should just, sorry for going back and forth. I forgot to tell about, we have of course some other plugin annotations here also. We have we call the plugin stages. The plugin stages is what we use for managing the life cycle of the components. Right now this one is in the release state, but we can start out with having stuff in the experimental state, and then we can release it. We can also say that now it's been superseded by another component. It works well with this component, but you should rather use this one, it's actually much better. And then finally we can also withdraw the components here. Okay, now we actually don't want to allow this component anymore because we figured out that it's actually not working in the way that customers wanted it to work. And usually when we withdraw things, we have a replacement for that. So in this annotation, you can also tell, okay, which components should be used instead of this component. And of course, the plugin documentation down here is, well, it says something about the component, and that's what we use also in the designer. We have some small tooltips that tells the administrators about what does this component do and how can you use it. So going to the review task, you can see that we actually have the parameters in here, the parameter interface, and if we go into this interface, we can see we have a get main method, which returns this what we call the server component plugin parameter. So as I mentioned, the parameters in the system can either be like simple parameters like strings or list of strings, or strings and list of strings, or booleans, or some other primitive types. But they can also be components, and when they're components, they will enter the framework as this server component plugin parameter. Then you can ask the framework to actually instantiate this component that has been configured into this parameter. And all these parameters also have some annotations, and we can actually also withdraw. I think we actually have this enforced validity that I talked about earlier. It's actually being withdrawn, so we can also withdraw the parameters. And we can have different stages on those. And the way we do it here is like if we have both for the components and the parameters. If something has been withdrawn, then we need to ensure backwards compatibility for the customers who's already configured their port with this. So they will of course survive and they will not have any errors, but they cannot add new ones of the same type that is removed from the address. So this is how we control the life cycle of components, and when we have a major release, we can move them, both the parameters and the components, we can move them one step in this component lifecycle. And of course, we have that in the release notes, so that the administrators are notified that now we do something with components. All right. Instead of going through this, which is, I just wanted to show you this node detail because that is the concrete one that I was just showing you. And I just going to take as example components which are much cleaner. So if you look at the oh yeah, right hand. Okay. Okay. The reason you're gonna see that they're not in the actual project right now. These example components, but so I can't really show you right now the interface for it. But the server component interface, it has three methods. It has. Sorry for just changing my mind all the time about this. Okay. So here we have the server component interface, which is what I call the base of all our components in the portal. There are three methods here. We have the configure parameter, the configure method, and the configure method is called first of all when the plugin system finds our component, it instantiates it, and it finds the configure method, and the configure method takes a plugin parameter. That parameter is what the framework has actually taken the configuration and instantiated an instance of the parameter that's being configured for this component. We start by configuring the component with everything that's been in the configuration. When that's done, we call the isIncluded. IsIncluded is the one that decides for this component, for this selection, for this configuration, should I be be visible right now with this current configuration that has been made from true false. And then if it returns true, then we go out and create the client component with the create client component. So, and as we see in this example, very basic, the only thing we actually really do here is just to store the parameter in this instance, and we call the get label when we construct the client component. That's the only thing. Yeah.
I think the question right now, is this annotations kind of supported by GWT or part of development framework?
This is on the server side only. This is something that belongs to the step framework. This is really nothing to do with GWT at this moment. We are using these all over the system, also in the workbench and in the server side and the domain layer, basically everywhere where we want stuff to be replaceable. You can say that the way that it works for our custom developers is that if they have a new version or they have an extended version of some component and they want to use that instead of the one that we have, then they can just make a new component with the same plugin ID, but with a higher priority. You can set the priority of the plugins also. So you can have you just replace the implementation by creating a new plugin with the same ID. This is what we use also in all the cases where we want custom development to be able to customize stuff and create something else, and we do decide in the core team that we want to implement stuff in a specific way. And we know that okay, this section, for instance, in the export, actually it's not just about replacing, but it's also about extending. So if we have an export, for instance, or if we have a validator, if we have something that we want the custom department to be able to extend, then say okay, you can create your own validator for an attribute. Right now, the barcode validator that I mentioned is not a part of the core. It will be soon, but right now it's not. So the customers who needed this barcode validator for one of the attributes just created a new validator, which is the same plugin type as all the other validators. It would be included in this list of validators. So this is strictly something to do in the server side, which we use for well, server side and the workbench, which we use for this. We're not yet in the GWT. So what happens now? Actually, I'm a little sorry that I don't have this diagram to show, so I can show the flow and who does what. But so the client components they are created. Well, actually, we start out by creating the entire tree. If you see, imagine this, we have this configuration which is nested with a lot of components and parameters. We create a server component tree with everything in there, everything configured and everything is checked and everything which wants to be included is included. And when that's done, we just run through everything recursively and ask them to create the client components. So now we create a client component tree. And the client components are the ones who go to the client. And the client components are where we start to see GWT implementations. So, of course, when we want to do something with GWT, we want it to be executed on the client in the browser all the time. So, of course, we should never have GWT stuff in the constructor of things, because the constructor is called on the server when it's constructing the client. So if you have something to do in the beginning, we have this init method that sets up a context with the client component. And when that's done, we simply just call the get view on this component. So the responsibility of the client component here is to have the values that are configured on the server. Those are configured on the client, but in a way that can be serialized, so it can be sent to the client. Because our server components are not serializable. So they cannot be sent to the client and we get serialization exceptions. So yeah, now I have problem with one of the IPs. That shouldn't be a problem. Where was it? Okay, so the responsibility of the client component is to store configured the configurations or the configured parameters in the client in a serializable way. And also for the value components, for instance, it will also bring the actual value for instance, for an attribute for selection. It will also bring that to the client in a serializable way. Sometimes the values of a component is not really, can be very complex, but then we have to do it in a way so we can serialize it and put it to the client and show it in a good way on the client. And also we prefer to have business logic on the server, of course. That's where we have access to all the method and all the power of step. But we have some logic that needs to go on the client for some reason, maybe some validation that can happen very fast on the client, that should happen in the client component. And the actual representation of stuff, like the stuff that actually calls GWT stuff and creates labels, creates panels, creates the view is what we call the view, which we have here. And the only thing that we have on the view interface here is the get widget method. The widgets, those are the GWT widgets that we create. It can just be a simple label, for instance. It can also just be a text box, and it can also be much more complex stuff. We have, for instance, some reference type components or the node list components, which are very complex, but they are also just a widget that we call. All right, so this is kind of the way that we build stuff up. We have the server components that create that are instantiated by the framework from our configuration. Then the server component will create their own client component. It will be populated with the values, etc., and will be sent to the client. And on the client, it will generate the actual view, which is the GWT widget. Once we have all this on the client, of course, we want to also be able to send something the other way. And for that purpose, we use a pretty simple command pattern. Suppose you know a command pattern, you have command, and it's pocketed in the client, sent to the server, and then it's executed on the server. So, and again, we have this idea that the components should be autonomous. They should just know something about themselves. So the responsibility of the one component, which has an attribute in description, for instance, all it knows is how to display this information to the user and figure out should it be read-only or should it be editable or something. And then when the framework wants to save it, it sends it gets the commands from each component, which contains information about, okay, if it's changed, we need to change something on the server, and those components are sent, commands are sent to the server where they execute. Okay, so let's just get back to we are expiring sensation. Let's go into another poll here. Maybe it should. This is another poll which also contribute with something else also. We can probably do the same search here. Okay, so now this is a different poll. So now in this case, we didn't just go to this component right away. We just have the list. And this list is one of the components that's we've been working out with. One of the things we've been working on here is we have some filtering in place. So where we have right here, for instance, is we have some archetypes, and we have different types of things here. We need to be able to say, okay, only want to see the SKU kind of products. Okay, we only have one of those. Fair enough. So maybe we should see the way around. And maybe we want to see, okay, which of these actually has a picture and which ones not have a picture. So that was only the one here. So okay, we can say also that if we go to what we call the multi-edit view here, we can actually we can actually go in here and say, okay, which of these doesn't have a depth applied here. So, sorry. Okay. And this enables the user to quickly figure out, okay, this is the one of the products that where we need to actually have a depth in here. So let's just enter something. We have, and this one we have a unit of this attribute. It says that if it, well, actually now we just have one unit here, it's millimeters. If we have multiple units, we can just choose one. We can also just say, well, millimeters is always millimeters. We just type in the number here. The system will, when we reload it, it will just add the millimeters to it. It doesn't really matter anything. So you can go in here and do some multi-editing. In this case, we have configured this component so that it will not save immediately. We can't have it in the auto-save mode, so as soon as you leave the field, you have persisted this change. But there are many times you really want to do a lot of change before you save it, just make sure that you have it right. And we also have a list over here of the items that we've been editing. So we have if you have a long list, you can easily navigate to the ones that you've edited, just to make sure that you keep the overview of which items have been edited and which have not been edited. If you're happy with the result, you can of course save the changes and yeah, the edited items is cleared out. Of course, if we are in the auto-save mode, this one over here will not be visible, because if you're auto-saving, it doesn't make any sense to show which one I edited. So this is one of the more complex components that we made. Actually, the columns that you see up here, each of the columns is a component. A column can be configured as a component for this list. You decide which one you want up there. Actually, the one we are working with right here is actually a value group, attribute group, sorry. We have this what we call global product attributes that's been configured here. So that's a group of attributes, and that can be maintained in the step system, and we show the entire group and just collapse it if we want to see it. So all of this has been implemented with very simple GWT stuff, standard GWT, most of it. Some of it had been, we had to hack a little to make it work a little better than Google thought it should work. And but basically, almost all of this is very standard GWT. We didn't use any third-party components for anything except, well, we had some uploading features and a few other things, but for almost all the components, we actually have just core GWT and nothing else. Right? Any questions? What? Yeah.
Oh, well, I have a lot of questions. First, it's the most interesting part regarding Enterprise GWT is the architecture of the GWT side. So, do you have, how do you handle that model on the client? How do you separate your view from, for example, do you use MVP pattern and so on? That's the first question.
Yeah, sure. Well, you can say that we don't. You can't really say that we use a pure MVC or MVP pattern, because we have a client component which is the presenter. We have the views, which are the views, and in some cases we do have a model for this list, for instance. Behind this list, there's a model, a data model, and there's also a presentation model that decides, like, for instance, if you want to expand this group, you have a change in the presentation model. But since our components, almost all of them, are very autonomous, we don't really have a need for a model, because what happens is if you have a change is in just one attribute, it's just like if you want to make a model for that, it would just be like a model for just like maybe one string for that, which would be probably a little overkill for this usage. And then instead of that, we have a messaging system which notifies the screen that now something has changed here. And the screen doesn't really know what has been changed, just knows that something changed. And when we want to persist stuff, it actually asks all the components to, if they have been changed, or they just ask, have you been changed or not? If it has been changed, so give me the command that I can use on the server to persist the change that has been happening. So in the case with the lists, we do have a model. We do have that's the closest we come to an MVP pattern on this list, because we do have a data model. And when we, I don't know how many items we have here, so maybe we can see if we just do the filtering. So maybe if I have another search, we can see that we can have searches that maybe return tens of thousands of items. Of course, we don't want to have that on the client. That would kill the client. So we just show the subset that we need for the paging. And as you scroll down, just like in the Google products, we have the images that just load as you scroll. And that's, of course, that means that we have the model that is changing. And the model changes, the view is listening on this change, and it will also change correspondingly. That's the model that changes. So that is the closest we come to an MVP pattern in this, and but for the rest, we actually don't have an MVP or MVP pattern.
For example, you said that you can configure if you have a save button or not, or if changes applied just on changes. If there is, if you have save button, you have some, your model is changed on the client side. Do you change that before save button is clicked? Do you change some state on server? Do you have some calls to server, or everything is handled on the client side, so you don't have any calls to server?
Well, it actually depends on the component. Some components might want to do some validation on the server right away when the user changes something. Mm-hmm. And also, as we see, I feel like with this example with the type of handle, we have a search oracle, whatever, then the EX. We have this change, and then this component wants to ask the server for a list of something, and maybe just immediately wants to validate that this Spark code number has the right format or something like that. So, but that also means that as soon as the user changes, that this component can say, yes, I have been changed, but I am invalid.
Yeah, so all the model is saved inside the component.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So, yeah.
And, consequently, do you have a unit tests for the client side code?
Very good question.
Yes.
No, and we want that.
And yeah, actually, that architecture will lead to some problems with unit tests.
We're actually changing the architecture quite a bit, and which we have done quite a few times, of course, as this has evolved. But one of the pain points is the lack of client-side unit testing. But one of the things that we are going to do to change that is that instead of having, we think right now we have too much weight on the client side right now. If the client side does read too much, we have too much code duplication. We have too many places where we need, for instance, this like the text area with the search oracle with suggested lists. We have that quite a few places. In all the places, we have that implemented. Basically the same way, which is bad because you want to have reuse. You want to have it somewhere we can unit test. So that's the change we'll be doing. Is actually going a little towards the way that Vardin does things. You know Vardin, the framework.
Do you use it now?
No, actually we don't use it.
Like not.
We don't use it. One of the reasons we don't use the first reason is that when we started this 5 years ago, Vardin was not mature enough for us. We actually looked into it. I'm not really sure if it actually, it doesn't matter. It wasn't mature enough for us at that time. And until recently, it was actually very difficult for us to, with the plugin system we have, with this flexibility we have to have the framework instantiate stuff based on the plugins. It was very difficult to combine that with the way that Vaadin actually instantiates stuff. They make some changes now that means that we could probably use Vaadin now, but now we've created so much now that a change to Vaadin would be a really big task. But then still we like the way that they work. We like the way that they use or that they create components. They create a lot of stuff on the server instead of having an explicit client-side programming model. So we want to go that direction also and look very closely to what they've done, because they've done some really nice things. So yeah, you might disagree, I don't know, but they actually, I think they made a good job, and maybe they have people say that it can be slow, it can be heavy, produce maybe too much overhead and stuff like that. And that's what we think it could be nice if we could take some of the stuff, some of the ideas they have about doing much more on the server, having a much smaller widgets on the client that we can use and we can instantiate on the server, and make the server components much more responsible for actually putting stuff together, and let the framework do the binding of all the event stuff, because that would enable us to make much better unit testing than we can do today. It's very difficult to unit test this stuff today, and that's why we don't really have a lot of unit tests. So how do we ensure that that stuff doesn't break? We do that extensively with using robot testing and using integration testing in different kinds. But robot testing saves us a lot in this area, but not enough, and it's actually too late also in the process. Because robot testing is something that's it takes a very long time. We have parallelized our robot testing. We can run this robot testing in as many services as we want to. Right now, I think we run 6 parallel servers for the robot testing. But still, it takes place a long time after stuff has been committed. So that's not very satisfying, because then maybe the day after you get a mail from this angry robot that says that you made something bad. You want to be able to figure out right away. So that's just hit a really big pain point right there, and something that we really want to change. You can say that unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, we are so busy that the guys who are actually responsible for implementing this was taken out to do something else in relation to this new release we just had now. And hopefully, he's our formal architect, and hopefully he gets his hands more free now to do what we think is the important stuff, instead of what the management think is important. And that sometimes clashes, but that's the real world for a company that wants to be driven by the customers. We need to nurture them and make sure they're happy. And then we just try to keep happy with what we have at the moment, and just come with some suggestions and say why it would be a really good idea to do this change.
Thanks.
What else?
Can you show an example of the real side which end users and customers?
Yeah, unfortunately I can't do that, because this is the closest we get. This is our test service. The reason is that at the moment, at least, we do not have any of our customers who are willing to expose their system. And I understand why, because if the competitors get access to the system in something like this, and they expose the system, then they would expose the entire database of the products, and maybe have unauthorized editing of the products. And they don't really like that. So we cannot show that. But we've just requested from the custom development department that we need some examples, if not in live demos, then at least in some screenshots or something, because we are in a situation which is, I think it's pretty fortunate for developers, that we code in peace, as you say at DevOps, that we are very much screened from angry customers, you can say that. Because usually a lot of angry, but they can be very persistent and very demanding. But we have the customers, then we have our project managers towards the customers. The project managers come with the requirements to our department, and it's been prioritized, and we have a good time to solve our issues and deliver them to the clients. But that also means when we don't have direct contact with the customers a lot in R&D, we don't see all these great things that they do a lot. So that's kind of a pity, because we know that some of these companies are doing some great stuff. But for instance, this pub chain, Michelsen and Butlers in the UK, they started out just managing they have around, I think, 1,200 and 1,600 pubs and restaurants throughout the UK. They just started out by just managing the pubs and restaurants and the tables instead. So they started also managing the menus, because then you can make some online reservation of tables, and then people could start saying, okay, I want to have this and that. That's fine, that was nice that they can use this. Then we came back 2 years later just to see how are things going. Then they suddenly had modeled a lot of different things in the system. They modeled not only the restaurants and the tables and the menus, but they also modeled the recipes for the stuff they make in the menu. So all the ingredients are modeled in step, and they have also a link to the guys at the companies who deliver all this stuff to the restaurant, so they know that they get a good discount, because it's a countrywide distributor of salads and stuff, so they get a good price. They also have a model what kind of machinery do we have in the kitchens, and this should be the same all over, and if it breaks down, who do we have to repair it. And also all the employees are modeled, and the relation to the managers, in relation to where they work, and all this kind of stuff. They started to model that, and that's great to hear that. But we would like, I get that we have a lot of customers who do equally great stuff in our system, and it would be really nice to hear that. So I'm really looking forward to now. We have just finished the workshop where we asked for all these kind of things that you were actually missing in the day-to-day life. But so that was a very, very long no to do we have an example. That's a very long way to say no, we don't have. Fortunately, I would love to show.